Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we're joined by Pastor Matthew Barnett, founder of the Dream Center in Los Angeles, and one of the most hands-on leaders I've ever met. At just 20 years old, Matthew took over a struggling church in the middle of gang-ridden LA. What started as a temporary assignment turned into a lifelong mission to serve people at rock bottom, from the homeless and addicted to single moms and veterans. Under his leadership, the Dream Center has grown into a 24/7 outreach hub that provides housing, food, rehab, and life transformation to thousands each day. On this episode, you'll hear the real story of how the Dream Center started, what kept him going through burnout and crisis, and how he's built a culture of servant leadership that's changing lives, one person at a time. Well, Pastor Matthew, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, it's a great joy to be here. Thank you.
We are sitting at the Dream Center, and it is just amazing. Tell us about the story of how the Dream Center got started.
Yeah, the Dream Center is everything I never thought I'd be doing. I came here at 20 years of age. My dad was a very successful pastor in Phoenix, Arizona. And there's a little church building that was going to be sold to the banks in the inner city of LA. And so some men came to my dad and said, would you help salvage and save this because we don't want to lose it? And my dad said, yeah, I'll do it. He didn't really feel called to it, didn't really know what to do, but he just said, I don't want to lose a great property, and that's been iconic in the community for years. So he called 10 pastors and drove them down the neighborhood, and he promoted it like it's on Sunset Boulevard. They don't realize Sunset starts in a very bad neighborhood, eventually gets to the Sunset Strip. But my dad showed 10 pastors in a van and drove them around and said, hey, would you like to take over? And all of them said no. And my dad came to me at 20 years of age. He said, would you like to come and help me for 3 months until I can find someone? I'm 20 years old. He's crazy. Right in the heart of gang warfare in LA at that time, really a bad time. And I said, yeah, I'll help you for 3 months. And then nobody took the offer. And then I was and now it's been 30 years. It's supposed to be 3 months. So we're still looking for the real pastor, probably. That's what's going on. But what happened was, I came to LA thinking I was going to be here for 3 months and then struggling, it turned into 6 months struggling. Leadership was, I can't really write a book on leadership because it went from 18 down to 2 in the first 6 months. We were going backwards, 900%, the lack of growth, whatever. And, one day I just walked around the city and I just felt like the Lord impressed upon my heart that I wasn't called to be a great pastor. I was called to be a city janitor. I saw the need. I saw the hurt. I went to Echo Park, saw young men up against police cars being arrested. I saw families piled into small apartments, homelessness everywhere. And I just felt free. And something in me said, you know what? I can die to the dream of what I think success is and live to the dream of being a blessing. And I started to celebrate whatever I had. And all I had was a desk and a phone. And I moved on the sidewalk and talked to all the mamas of the neighborhood when they came by and put a jar of candy and said, you know what, that's all I have for it. I'll just give candy away to the kids. It turned into 5 bags of food. And then it just began to grow. We owned 2 houses in that neighborhood, and I took in homeless guys that were living with me. I took them off the street, and I didn't know what to do and how to do rehab, but I just said, just come and read the Bible with us in the morning and figure it out. And that little neighborhood, with my 5-year plan, went from 18 down to 2 with my 5-year plan. But when I just started to love people and find a need and fill it and find a hurt and heal it and just be available and use every square inch of our property and my old desk, and I was a secretary, everything, moved outside. That's the time where sometimes your dream has to hit rock bottom in order for it to be recreated into what it was meant to be. Wow. And everything I thought from Phoenix and a great church, all that had to die. And we always say that God doesn't destroy dreams in rock bottom, he recreates them. And there is a recreated dream that comes sometimes from everything failing and the thing that you think it should go. And then one day I was driving down the Hollywood freeway. I see this big old hospital. It said for sale. I'm 23 years of age. I'm dumb enough to pull over the side of the road. And they were filming Halloween in this hospital. They filmed Nightmare on Elm Street in this hospital. Oh. This hospital on this 101 freeway is slasher film century. That's really what it is. And they were filming them for 8 years in this hospital. And I pulled over and the Catholic Church owned it. And I said, I want to buy this building. How much is it? And they kind of laughed and they said, well, come back when you want to make a real offer. So I called my dad. I said, let's just check it out. So we showed up and we said, we seriously want to buy this building. And they said, well, do you have $16 million back in 1996? to buy this building because that's what Paramount Studios is going to buy it. And I said, no, but we have a dream. We have a dream of a 24-hour church that will never sleep. They'll be open all hours of the day. Anyone's homeless in the middle of the night, they have a place to stay. Anybody that's in need, they have a place to stay. And the sisters cried and they said, make us an offer. We're so touched. And we didn't know what to do because we didn't expect the meeting to go that well. And I looked at my dad and he said, $3.9 million, 75% off. And they said, wow, that's a low offer. And they said, but you know what? Would you promise to use it to help people? We said, yes, we would. They accepted our offer for $3.9 million. And we made it with only $50,000 a year income coming into our church. So it was a huge risk. But we realized that God loved the people that in LA that are the most broken more than we did. And if he loved them more, then he'd have to come through. And we've seen this happen. We've been here for 28 years in the city of LA, in this building, 30 years total. And it took us 20 years to renovate this building. So it's not an overnight success. It was learning to celebrate one room at a time, one victory at a time, and eventually getting to the place where it's completed today. And 700 residents live here a day, and thousands will be fed on this campus a day and all week long. But it's everything we never thought we'd be doing. But that dream going to that desperate place of rock bottom was only elevated and rebuilt the way it should be. And the thing about dreams are, sometimes when your dream fails as a leader and it falls, and you start dreaming from a place of brokenness, you find that you have strengths you never knew that you had. I never knew that I loved hurting people this much. I never knew that I loved the prisoner that much. I never knew how much ability, I guess, I had to do things that were never in my skill set that I thought. So I thank God every day that the thing that I thought I was going to be doing died so that something new could be reborn.
Wow. Well, first off, thank you, because just the story of your faithfulness is unbelievable.
Thank you.
And from a leadership standpoint, there is so many cool lessons just along that story. One of the things that I really appreciate walking around the Dream Center, and I've been here multiple times and you've shown me around, is there are people who come from all around the world to come learn at the Dream Center, learn leadership skills, learn how to serve others. You're teaching a lot of people leadership. And on the other side, a lot of the people who work here are people who were completely down on their luck, who had just terrible misfortune in their life, who went through the program and now have become leaders helping serve other people who were in their shoes. What an honor. How did you even get to a point to where you could help train people to be such amazing leaders in both circumstances?
Yeah, we had to learn to take a risk on risky people, really. And I've had situations where, our rehab program is a year long. So after about 2 years, 70% of our staff are graduates of our rehab program, 70%. I mean, we got ex-criminals, we got drug dealers, we got, everything. That's just a pastoral staff. That's not including everybody else we got going on. That's what we say here. But we really are kind of like the Oakland A's in the movie Moneyball, where we're just constantly churning out that minor league system. But what it is, there are people that are coming through our program that have come through hardcore addictions. And when you give them a chance to dream, the greatest way that somebody can overcome a lifelong addiction is to pour into them and give them some momentum of being sober, but giving them something great to live for. There's nothing more compelling. Even the scripture in the Bible says, where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, which means there's no reason to have self-control. I mean, I understand why a young man joins a gang. There's no reason, nothing to live for, trying to find something. But they become a part of our team and the staff. And then we have youth groups and teams come from all over the world to serve here, 6,000 a year. And the goal is when people come here to say, oh, that's not that hard. That's what we want. We want people to walk out here to say, oh, that's not a big deal. And they find out just how simple ministry is when you just start using what you have, making a big deal about what you have, never saying, oh, when we get this building, then we'll be happy. And it's not like serving is never a place where you arrive. It's a journey of loving everything that you have, what you have to give along the way. And then it just kind of unfolds the way it's going to unfold. And that's how it's happened at the Dream Center.
Wow. On this podcast, we talk a lot about servant leadership. And one of the things, even when we were first starting this podcast, that I thought of was your experience on Skid Row. Yeah. Can you share with our audience a little bit about where you were at in the journey of the Dream Center and what
you just made a crazy decision. So talk about that.
Yeah, I love talking about it. I've actually been here for 30 years. And I think as a leader, one of the things that's most important is keeping your heart alive. I can go to conferences and big events and I get a lot of inspiration, but all of the vision that I need is found in the valley of hurting people, in the need, in the walks around the community. So I get my inspiration from many things, but I get really the valley, it's the need, it's the hurt. But I was feeling tired as a leader. I was feeling like weird, like it was robotic. And I know that you don't always go by feelings, but I was going by this robotic feeling for way too long. And it was our anniversary of being a pastor here, and everyone wanted to celebrate. And I said, that just doesn't feel right. And something came in my heart and said, I just want to go to Skid Row and live there until I feel like God wants me to stop. And service was over, and I grabbed a piece of cardboard, and one of the guys in our rehab program said, hey man, I want to come with you and I'll show you everywhere. And so I went down to Skid Row, and I saw things I never dreamed I would see. I lived down there for several days and, slept on the streets, saw rats the size of softballs. Just saw young women that were literally jumping from tent to tent for $1, doing horrible favors just to get their fix in a little bit more. Porta potties that were used as prostitution. Everything I saw down there was the most alarming thing. And when I was walking down there in the first hour, there were threats like, you're not going to make it through here. What are you doing down here? And then I just didn't know what to do. So I just kind of held up a Bible and walked around. And it was the most unbelievable thing. Suddenly I became like an honorary chaplain. People were yelling out to me in tents like, hey, guy of the Bible, can you talk to me? And I'd sit in the tent and they were talking about their lives. And I said, where's your family live? Oh, 4 miles down the road, but I burned too many bridges. I can never go back. And I talked to people with needles in their arms. And as I was even speaking to them and shoot needles between their toes and just watching what was going on was the most unbelievable experience, and seeing children and families living in the tents. And when I was on Skid Row and I saw all those little children living in the tents amongst the horrible things that were going on down there, I called the Dream Center. I said, look, we got to open up a place for families. And they said, yeah, well, that's kind of 6 months down the road. I said, I know it is, but do we have some rooms available? Let's just take in our first family and get going right now. We took in our first family on that floor. And I got back to the Dream Center and I realized that they actually prepared 20 rooms, the whole floor. They just said, let's just go. And I said, why'd you do that? They said, Pastor, because we know you. Once you start talking, you're not going to shut up. So we figured, let's just prepare all 20. But that was where we got the vision to do the homeless family floor. And Skid Row is just, it's a place where people just have really gone to die. There's different levels of Skid Row. There's places where veterans hang out. There's places where people are new to Skid Row. And there are places where there's literally walls where people are going to die. There's actually different levels of pain and hurt on Skid Row. And that was the day that my heart broke. And it brought me back to the one, because as a leader, you can get so bogged down in getting the vision forward. But you got to keep your heart alive. And that's what I've chosen to do many times as a leader. Put myself in uncomfortable positions, but I put myself in positions where the scenery changes, where the drive home changes, or anything changes, just to keep your heart alive. Because if your heart is alive, the vision will stay alive. And that's what we've learned over the years.
Wow. I have so much respect for you. One of the things, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but we got to know each other a little bit over the last year. And one of the things that I remember you saying in 2024 was how hard you've been pushing. And one of the things that would be nice was like if things just got a little bit easier moving into 2025. And you were just talking about how like you've been going and lots of amazing God stories. Then 2025 comes along, and the most tragic thing possible, and you're in the heart of LA. Talk about what 2025 was like and has been like with the fires that have just destroyed communities, and really how the Dream Center has been the thing that has saved tens of thousands of lives just in the midst of chaos.
Yeah, leading up to 2025, it's funny because 2022 to 24 were the most unbelievably difficult years of my life. I had a stroke just randomly. I was getting one of those chair back massages in the mall, and then I got up and I couldn't speak. My language was completely blurred. It was the craziest thing. And they rushed me to the hospital, saved my life. I had 3 strokes in my brain. and sitting in the hospital and wondering how the Dream Center is going to continue to move forward. And then a day later, the roof of our dome of our church building that we received was given to us by the Foursquare Church. The dome fell, and we were out of our church building for a year, and the stroke, and coming off of the pandemics and all the struggles that went along with that. And I really was kind of praying. I said, God, it's been a good run, hasn't it? Like sometimes as a leader, you look back and you think to yourself, you know what? It's been a good run, and you try to like convince other people, or if your pastor convince God, that's been a good run, and it was very, very difficult. And we got to 2024 at the end, and I was in December 31st, 2024. I was on my first vacation, my family, my father and everyone, 10 years. We were in Mexico, and I was looking up at the fireworks, and I said, God, 2025, it's going to be the year of rest, isn't it? And 2025 came around, and right after all that, we had the fires, and I was literally living right next to him. I live right next to him. I was going down the freeway to get away from the fire. I could see it. And I was the displaced. Many of our staff were displaced who lived in the Altadena area, and we showed up. And so we were kind of the displaced helping the displaced. And they said, what do we do? And we look at the dark clouds, and I was standing on the rooftop of this, our hospital building. You can see Hollywood on fire and Altadena and everywhere that was taking place. And I said, guys, all that we know what to do in times of need is to show up. The ministry of showing up. What do we have? Well, we got enough food in our food bank for a few days. And I said, well, let's just announce that we have it. People need it. We have clothes. Let's just announce it. And little to be realized, it would turn into 19,000 cars that would show up of people who had nothing. They lost everything. People from Altadena were showing up, and they would go through the line and they would just cry. And they would get out their car and say, help, help. And that line not only became a place of feeding, but the whole city of Altadena was literally coming to us. They go to the Dream Center. And through that, really a beautiful kind of pandemonium and chaos broke out. We had 1,200 volunteers in one day show up. And I told our team, say yes to everything. Let's don't turn away clothes. Because the goodwill of LA is breaking forward. People have never passed that side of the freeway in LA. And they live in their own little bubbles. I said, people are joining together. Let's just say yes to everything. And let's have the ministry of inconvenience. And yet let's use what we have to go serve people. And out of that, miracles happen. Out of that, still to this day, we're doing 4-hour feedings a day. Miracles are happening. We had Tony Robbins show up. He was looking for a place to give $1 million to 100 families, $10,000. And he was looking around, and, a lot of people wanted processing fees for finding the families and all that. We're like, no, 100%. You give us 100 checks, $10,000. I will go personally to the lots of the families to give it to them. And we did it. 100 families. Ryan Seacrest came by, did the same thing, gave $5,000 to 20 families, and just goodwill started breaking out. And it's crazy that, when it comes to outreach and helping people or anything, the perfect plan is the perfect plan as you just keep going. And we begin to see that unfold. And now still to this day, last week, 145 families got $750, gift debit cards with partnerships that we have now. And it just hasn't stopped. And it's amazing when you just get started and you say yes to something. You look like an expert when the reality is all you are doing is being available. And I think even a lot of startup companies, I think a lot of, people that are successful today, they still have a little bit of that edge to them where, you have structure and you have order, but you have it so that it can serve, so that you can be spontaneous. And that's why I tell a team, we have order, we have structure, all that, so that we can be spontaneous. They're not enemies of each other. And so we've just seen one of the greatest moments of our life. 2025 is completely different. 2024, I always say this to leaders, be very vulnerable. There was times I maxed out my credit cards to make payroll. That's how tough it was in 30 years. But as a leader, you got to make those sacrifices sometimes. And now 2025, we're kind of off and running, and great things are happening. And, I like to tell leaders about the good times, but I also like to tell them about the struggles. I tell even pastors sometimes, we're going through the hardest season. Things are actually going backwards. Even during COVID, I said, a lot of our giving is going backwards. And they're like, really? Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that happened to you too. But I think as leaders, the older you get, the more you understand that the greatest gift that you have is just honesty and vulnerability.
I mean, the stories of leading in crisis, not many people can relate to the true crisis that you have helped lead throughout, whether it be the fires or other things throughout the LA communities. What are some of those things that you take away, additional lessons, leading through crisis?
I think that every time that you step up in a crisis and you deliver, it gives everyone a lot more confidence. It gives your team more confidence. It gives the community confidence. They start, understanding what the Dream Center is really all about. The whole city begins to have confidence in you because you continue to deliver on those type of things. And I also believe that you have to allow your heart to just get immersed into what people are feeling like, even though you won't ever be able to fully understand, relate, but you put yourself in what it would be like to be in that situation yourself. And then as a leader, when you throw yourself into a crisis, it makes you better because there's so much uncertainty. There's so much pivoting. There's so much things that you have to do. There's so many ways that you have to be. It's funny. Leadership is interesting. You start on the ground floor, you do everything. And then you get to a place where you can manage, and you get to a place where you're higher profile, you can really manage. And then when a crisis hits, you're right back on the street again, being the first one to give away food. And I think crisis situations as a leader, you got to be willing to go say, all right, this is the time where I got to lead by example. And I got to put my heart and soul into this so that the team sees that there's a buy-in and how much relief and disaster relief really matters. And so when there's situations like that, during COVID, 380 days straight, I was out there handing out food, 380 days in a row. And then there's times where, other people got it and they're going, but there's times where leadership always has to be that spark. You have to jump into the fray, into the battle. And that's what I've learned is never be afraid of the different seasons as a leader you've got to embrace because all of it's good, all of it's important, and all of it's necessary.
I've heard some people talk about servant leadership with the lens of sacrificial leadership. And there are many stories that I've heard about you from doing all-nighter free throw shooting and all kinds of things where you've just given of yourself to a level that is just unbelievable. How do you manage maintaining yourself and also this passion and sacrificial love that you have for the community and those around you?
Yeah, that's been the hardest thing, actually, over all these years. But there's one thing that I've learned that's really helped me as a leader to be able to manage myself. First of all, of course, prayer and loving God with all your heart and doing the best you can. Get up and just be disciplined in what you do in the reading of God's word and prayer. But there's one secret that I learned that changed my life, and that is when you commit yourself to the longevity of a vision, you're not going to get discouraged by hard times. Because that times will change, things will happen. There'll be new seasons in your life. So when I told myself that I'm going to give the rest of my life to serving the people of LA, there's a certain kind of freedom in that because I wasn't bound anymore to needing to be where I wanted to be in a year, needing to be 5 years down the road. It's like, at some point, something good's going to happen because I'm all in for the rest of my life. And I think that's really helped me to understand that people think, because, the people see this 400,000 square foot hospital, they say, wow, what a visionary. And the truth is, I'm actually pretty patient. I'm patient in the sense of I don't have to have everything whenever I want it. There's things that, ministries that we had that took 20 years to come about. The right person wasn't ready yet. Now the right person is. We've got ministry to, drug and alcohol rehab, 210 residents. We have 200 plus residents are homeless families. We've got veterans and all these things, but a lot of these just kind of unfolded over time. So I think the fact that when you commit yourself long-term to something, and your heart is in it, then there's just a lot of freedom in the middle of those seasons because you know that you have time. And that's why the Dream Center's rehab programs are 1 year. We call it the luxury of time. People do better when they have time, when they're not hustling to try to survive or to try to provide for their family. And everything's taken care of at the Dream Center. It's crazy. It's cost $150,000 a year to incarcerate someone in Los Angeles. It costs $7,500 a year for us to rehabilitate someone.
Wow.
And I think about that number all the time. And so, we patiently walk out the cause that we have been given. And we just try to do one thing well and move on to the next. And then we don't really think about what ministry to start because the need finds us, shows up on our doorstep. And we kind of feel that man's need is God's call for the day.
it's interesting because from afar, people will look at the Dream Center and think this has been so instrumental in helping so many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of millions of people. So it's amazing. But sometimes when they see that, they probably think, well, the Dream Center doesn't need me. And they don't need us to get involved because they'll figure it out and they're going to be there regardless of if I get involved or not. How do you help motivate people to get involved and actually understand that there is still true need?
Yeah, really what we do is make it easy to volunteer. Make it easy to serve. You know, people say, hey, when can I come down to the Dream Center? I'm like, right now, because there's always something going on. It's like the Grand Central Station of ministry. You know, there'll be training leaders station here. One day I want to put up a big old board of just like, what time, minutes, things are going to be ready to happen, because we try to make it very volunteer friendly for people to come. Our hospital doesn't have gates, no securities, nothing like that. And the reason why we do that is because the neighborhood will protect you if you don't like have all this, you know, fancy security gates and all that, because when you're feeding their parents, when you're feeding the gang members' moms and their brothers, and you're providing opportunities and basketball leagues for them, they'll protect you. And so we've made it very easy for the community to have access to this place, made it very easy for volunteers to come in. Like we got kids coming in from Nebraska to serve, and they go to like some of our neighborhoods. We've been there for 30 years. Nickerson Gardens, Jordan Downs, South Central, Ramona Gardens, East LA, really tough neighborhoods, you know, where Training Day was filmed at the end with Denzel, like those neighborhoods. And they're like, oh, everybody's so nice to us there. And I never want to burst their bubble to say anything, but we have toiled that land for so long. So if a kid from Nebraska shows up and maybe doesn't understand what to do, the people of the project will be like, you're with the Dream Center, you're cool. You know, so you have to earn the right to be heard in the community. You got to keep showing up. When I first came here to LA, people said to me, you won't last long. And I realized that they were right in a sense, because so many things have come and gone and left them. But one thing I realized is that the only way I was going to win them over is longevity and being there and standing the test of time. So I think a lot of people, they said they don't need us. Oh man, we don't need them. Our kitchen right now needs them. I mean, things never stop here. They just keep going and going and going all hours of the day. And just, you know, every way from giving and support to volunteering, just so many things go so far for this place.
Yeah, for our listeners, I would encourage them to even just check out the website and figure out what could you be called to get involved with, whether it be volunteering or giving. I mean,
or somebody who needs a free rehab program.
Yeah,
like we'll take them in online application. Someone has fentanyl addiction, free of charge, and serve your audience that way. So I mean, we're here for you.
How do you keep motivation in the context of our listeners? How do you keep motivation knowing that the need will always be there? You're working to, or is the perspective maybe it won't be there? How do you deal with that? And just thinking, people in their own lives are thinking, "Gosh, this will never end. Is it worth it?" You know?
Yes, I think about the ones who make it. That's what keeps me going. Because if you think about the ones who don't make it, you get discouraged. And so, but I think about the ones that every few weeks that walk through on the stage and they make it, or the young girl that was trafficked so horrible that was brought to us by the police. She was abused in such a way when she showed up at the campus, she was just like walking like this with her hair down, wouldn't even look at anyone. And now she can articulate a vision more beautiful than anything I've ever seen. I think about those because you have to, as a leader, you have to keep your heart alive too. And one of the ways to do that is you have to create a culture of celebration. That's why every 2 weeks we make a big deal about guys who've been off drugs for 2 weeks. You know, they'll come up to us and say, how long have you been sober? Man, 14 days. I'm like, that's amazing. Like we jump up and down, make a big deal because so many people, you know, shame and condemnation are the two greatest, most destructive forces of a vision, of leaders, of anything. And also, of course, people addiction. So when you make a big deal about the wins, it's important because we make such a big deal about the defeats in our own life. And so that's just kind of the culture that we create around here. And that's what keeps me motivated is just the little stories, man. Before I walked in here, family was checking in. Oh, this is our 8th place we've been to. I go, well, this is the 8th place where you land. You come on in. And what keeps me motivated is the one, believe it or not, it's always the one in the midst of all the stuff that's going on. Because you can conceptualize that. You can think about how that's directly helping people in the midst of a big vision.
Walking around the Dream Center campus, probably, I I don't know, more than a dozen times. One of the things I love is that you could stop somebody and ask them to share their story. And it's a fascinating thing, or if they're willing to. And on the spot, people have such powerful stories. And the circumstances they've been through are not so positive to get there. How do you bring joy into their life? Like they light up when you ask them to tell about their story.
It's because the first thing we ask somebody when they come into our rehab program who have been addicted to fentanyl, addiction, maybe just thrown up in the garbage can down the hall. I mean, literally. But the moment they get even somewhat clear, we ask them the question is this, what is your dream? And it blows their mind, because how can you dare ask me what my dream is when I'm still trying to kick off of a drug? But it's a game changer. When you start asking questions like that, you start elevating the expectations and the belief of what they can do. They're not going to get there overnight. That's why we have a whole year, because we can patiently walk them through those type of issues. And so everyone is alive to their dream. Shame is broken when they come in, because we break that shame barrier and realize that their testimony is powerful and what it does. And their testimony is a contribution to society, because even though someone can't relate to your story of overcoming a drug addiction, they can relate in some personal way in their own life to their own struggle. I mean, overcoming is overcoming no matter what you're going through. And so I think there's just a sense of your testimony is not a shameful place. It's a place where you're helping people. And people realize that when they're sharing their testimony, they're ultimately helping people. And that's a powerful thing.
I love that. I want to finish with 10 rapid fire questions.
Oh, no. Okay.
Where I just ask you anything and just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
No right or wrong answer. But who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
My father, Tommy Barnett.
Wow. That's awesome. 5 words that most describe you.
Impulsive, reckless, caring, I think, consistent, and tenacious.
Favorite author or book?
The John Wooden book. What's it called? The Success book. It's called Wooden. It's about the story of Coach John Wooden.
I'll have to look that up. Favorite movie?
Hot Rod.
All right. Favorite food? Hot Rod, shake and bake.
Anything funny? Yeah. Favorite food? I would say tacos.
All right. Favorite thing to do in your free time?
Watch any sport.
Okay. And watch your daughter run.
Yes. I actually like to look at track and field meets so I can scout out her opponent as she's a college runner and give her information.
Love that. All right. What's a surprising fact about you?
I'm a really good softball player.
That is surprising.
And I hit .820 in one season 1 year. I only got out 3 times as a leadoff hitter.
That's awesome. Where's the favorite place you've been?
Rome.
Where's somewhere you want to go that you have not gone?
Fiji.
And finally, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Hang in there long enough and something good will happen to you.
Wow. Well, Pastor Matthew, this has been such a pleasure. I'm thankful that our audience gets to learn from you, and thank you for all that you have done for millions of people around the country.
Oh, it's a joy to be with you. What an honor. And let's go for it. I just encourage every leader out there to stay in it. Good things will happen. The tide will turn, and days where things aren't going well, they're not backwards days. They're just bridge days towards something new. You're going to get there.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.